Tales of American Political History with Clint and Porter Hackney.
I have to admit, I'm a huge baseball fan, as well as an obvious follower of American political history. But there are very few stories that tie the two together. Well, I found one. It's almost certain that Franklin Roosevelt had a greater impact on Major League Baseball than any other U.S. president. Roosevelt served during a critical time on many fronts, and baseball was one of them. He was president during both the Great Depression and World War II and had success in the face of both challenges. But he also left a specific mark on the national pastime that caused a surge in its popularity and profitability. The commissioner of Major League Baseball during the Roosevelt administration was Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and an exchange of letters between the two in January of 1942 was to have a profound influence on the future of the game. We've been talking about the impact that President Franklin Roosevelt had on Major League Baseball, emanating from letters exchanged between he and Baseball Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis in January of 1942. America was recovering from the Great Depression, but was just entering World War II. At the same time, professional baseball had its own problems, which seemed minuscule compared to the war. Major League Baseball had been through a good run in the 1920s and early 30s, but by the beginning of the war against Germany and Japan, two urgent questions were at hand. Most importantly was the question of whether baseball should even continue forward in the midst of the full commitment the war required. A lesser question that had been vigorously debated for almost 10 years among the team owners was whether to play more games at night or shut night games down altogether. Once the U.S. entered World War II, Baseball Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis wrote the president asking for Roosevelt's guidance as to whether the baseball leagues should be shut down so all resources could be diverted to the war effort. Whether to cancel the baseball season seemed an easy yes or no question compared to the biggest issue that had confronted the commissioner the previous 10 years. That perplexing controversy was whether to allow baseball games to be played at night. And if so, how many night games per season should be permitted? The first Major League night game was in 1935 at Cincinnati's Crosley Field. After that season, the opposition to night baseball was so strong that Commissioner Landis limited each team to no more than 7 games per year under the lights. By 1942, baseball's attendance and revenues had shrunk from the heydays of the 1920s, and there had long been controversy over whether night games should be allowed. Opponents of night games had long argued 4 points to support their position: that hitting and fielding would be negatively affected, that players would not be able to adjust back and forth day and night, that there would be more injuries, and that the fans would not support it. Then, as the year began and the U.S. entered World War II, Baseball Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis had to decide whether to cancel the 42 season, and future ones if the war continued. In what would turn out to have a big effect on the game, Landis decided to consult his friend, President Roosevelt, so he scribed a handwritten letter. The Commissioner of Baseball had written a letter to the President inquiring whether baseball should be discontinued since all resources should be dedicated to the war cause. President Roosevelt responded in a letter that became known as the Green Light Letter. He made it clear that it was best for the country to keep playing baseball, and it was a needed recreational outlet. In what reads as almost an afterthought, Roosevelt suggested that he wished there could be more night games because it gave more chances for day workers to see more games occasionally. That suggestion had an incredible positive impact on the major leagues. More night games were played, and attendance and revenues soared. A few years later, the war had ended and Roosevelt had passed away. But nighttime baseball under the lights was here to stay.